Workers and Overseas Filipinos Act of 1995 as amended by Republic Act number 10022.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development and Foreign Relations.
Letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15, Paragraph A of Republic Act number 7653, the New Central Bank Act, Memorandum number M-2017-040, dated 21 December 2017, and circular letter number CL-2018-005, dated 12 January 2018.
To the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions and Currencies.
Additional reference of business resolutions. Peace Resolution number 605, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the incidence of faceless money. Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
The Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions and Currencies.
Peace Resolution number 606, a resolution commending and congratulating Jerwin and Cajas for winning the International Boxing Federation Junior Bantamweight title, Emmanuel Manny Pacquiao.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of the following: PS Resolution 504-510 and the privileged speech of Senator Subiri under Committee Report 232 and Senate Bill 1662 under Committee Report 233. These measures pertain to the inquiry on the death of Horacio Atio Castillo due to hazing and strengthening the law of hazing, respectively, Mr. President. So I move that we consider all of them.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. The parliamentary status of the measures is that we have already closed the period of amendments. However, we were informed that members and Senator Gordon particularly is requesting that we reopen the period of individual amendments so that he can introduce his amendments. So as one who voted in favor of the motion, I now move for the reconsideration of Senate Bill 1662 under Committee Report 233.
Any objection?
Consideration of the measure in the period of individual amendments, Mr. President.
In effect, we are going to reopen the period. Is that Majority Leader?
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection to the motion, which will result in the reopening of the period for individual amendments? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And also for the record, that was the last motion that we approved, therefore. So now I move to recognize the Chairman of the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Senator Pampilo Lacson, and to introduce individual amendments, Senator Richard Gordon, Mr. President.
The sponsor, Senator Lacson, is recognized, and for purposes of introducing amendments, Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of my good friend, Senator Lacson, I'd like to propose an amendment on page 16, line 13, add the following, and this is pursuant to my interpellation the other day, including but not limited to suspension or revocation of his or her professional license for a period of not more than 3 years, period to be reinstated as a member of the respective professional board. Such professionals shall submit affidavits from at least 3 disinterested persons, good moral certification from different unaffiliated and credible government, religious, and social civic organizations, and such other relevant evidence to show that he has become morally fit for admission into the profession. So that the provision, when read from line 8, Mr. President, would now read as follows. Provided further...
What page, sir? What page? Page 16. Page 16.
Page 16, line 13.
Line 13, okay, yes, sir.
So that the provision, when read from line 8, Mr. President, would now read as follows. Provided further that should the former officer, non-resident member, or alumni belong, not belongs, but belong to any other profession subject to regulation by the Professional Regulation Commission, PRC, he or she shall immediately be subjected to disciplinary proceedings by the respective professional boards, including but not limited to suspension or revocation of his or her professional license for a period of not more than 3 years, period. To be reinstated as a member of the respective professional board, such professional shall submit affidavits from at least 3 disinterested persons, good moral certifications from different unaffiliated and credible government, religious and social-civic organizations, and such other relevant evidence to show that he has become morally fit for readmission into the profession. I submit, Your Honor.
I'm inclined to accept, Mr. President. However, some members of the, some colleagues would want to take a look at your proposed amendment because they don't know or they don't understand what to approve, Mr. President.
Mr.
But,
President, if the distinguished gentleman ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, the other members do not have a copy of that. I'm sorry. You will have. I beg your indulgence. I move for another minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended. Walang copy.
Frank. We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Before the sponsor accepts the amendment, may we hear from, again, the proponent, Mr. President, Senator Gordon.
Mr. President, you will recall that in my interpellation, I referred to the Supreme Court, and Senator De Leon had a lively discussion on this matter, saying that the Supreme Court is the principal agency that has sway on all matters in the practice of the profession. That's a constitutional provision, Mr. President.
Of the legal profession.
Of the legal profession.
Yes.
Now, with respect to the other professions, Mr. President,
Yes.
it would not be a level playing field because the Supreme Court can say, all right, sa mga abogado, kailangan, katulad dun the case of Argusino, he just submitted the, he was required by the Supreme Court to submit the certificate of good moral character from different unaffiliated and credible government, religious, and social civic organizations. And he was reinstated, Mr. President. Now, when you talk about the professionals, Mr. President, it would be uneven. So what we're saying is, and I just want to correct because I wasn't able to spot this. I've been very, very tired because of the hearings this morning and last night. The provision will now read, provided further that should the former officer, non-resident member, or alumni belong to any other profession subject to regulation by the Professional Regulatory Commission, he or she shall immediately be subjected to disciplinary proceedings by their respective professional boards, including but not limited to suspension or revocation of his or professional license for a period of not more than 3 years. Such professional may be reinstated, that's a change, Mr. President, not to be. Such professional may be reinstated as a member of the respective professional board. Such professional shall submit affidavits from at least 3 disinterested persons, good moral certifications from different unaffiliated and credible government, religious, and social civic organizations, and such other relevant evidence to show that he has become morally fit for admission into the profession. I'm merely leveling the playing field, Your Honor. And so it is not automatic. He may be, depending on the recommendations and his actual condition, Mr. President. Subject to style, Mr. President.
Subject to style.
Subject to style, accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Any objection from the floor? Hearing none, the amendment is approved. Subject to style.
There are no more individual amendments, Mr. President. I move to close the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
I therefore move to adopt the findings and recommendations contained in Committee Report number 232, Mr. President.
Any objection to the motion, which is to adopt the findings of Committee Report number 232 and approve the same? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Now, Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill 1662 under Committee Report 233.
Any objection? Hearing none, the said measure is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to...
Majority Leader, Senator Subiri.
I move to...
I'll just say...
Okay. Before we move for the suspension of the measures, Mr. President.
Okay. Senator Subiri is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm overjoyed by today's session due to the approval of the anti-hazing law. I'd like to thank the Majority Floor Leader for giving this his utmost priority. He mentioned yesterday that it's been several Congresses that he's been fighting for this. Thank you, sir. We'd like to also thank especially the chairperson of the Committee on Public Order and Security, Senator Ping Lacson, for shepherding this through several hearings and investigations. We thank you, dear sir. The family of Acho Castillo is here with us, the Castillo family, and we are elated by the quickness of the approval of the said measure. We'd like to thank all our colleagues for giving it its full support and allowing the passage at the soonest possible time, as soon as the committee report was approved by the said chairman. The committee report, both on the law as well as the committee report on the investigations will be a big help on the civil and criminal cases filed by the family against its perpetrators. And I thank Senator Lacson for the very strongly worded committee report in the results of the investigation on the Acho Castillo, as this will help their family in the cases filed in court. Because the investigations here in the Senate, of course, weigh heavily on the findings of other of the judicial branch of government. And I'd like to also invite, and Senator Gatchalian, I'd like to invite, I thank the authors as well, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Joel Villanueva, and Senator Richard Gordon, and all the members of the Senate for helping us shepherd this through. And as a gesture, Mr. President, when we approve this on third and final reading on Monday, and I believe it will be set on Monday, with the permission of the principal sponsor, Senator Ping Lacson, and the permission of all our members, if it is all right, Mr. President, if we can invite all the other families whose sons and daughters were victims of hazing to come during the third reading approval and show to the public that hopefully with this approval, it will be the end of the injustice caused to their families and to all future families. This will finally stop the hazing done to our children. So maraming salamat po, Mr. President. Congratulations to the 17th Congress for the approval of this measure. I'm putting the cart ahead of the horse because we have not yet ratified, but I'm sure this will go through ratification very soon. And again, I'd just like to thank all my colleagues for their support. Lalo na si Chairman Ping. Chairman Ping, maraming salamat po. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Subiri has just touched a very soft chord in this representation because, well, I'm glad that this time around we have the family of Atio Castillo with us, and they are surely hell-bent on seeking justice. I'm glad, Mr. President, because I have a bad experience. I've had a bad experience on a hazing case in Sambeda before of Mr. Marvin Reglos, who was also a law student. And he died of hazing. The three persons who were charged were in the provincial jail, Rizal Provincial Jail. And I gave Marvin Reglos' family a lawyer to handle. The lawyer, in fact, is the Secretary of the Commission on Appointments now that you have appointed, Mr. President, Secretary Hector Villacorta. The case was prospering well, but there was a time when my wife, who was doing a movie, had a was filming in the Rizal Provincial Jail. And she was there with her aide, and one of the suspects who was there approached the aide of my wife and told him to tell me na pagbutihin ko raw dahil lalabas daw sila. I was really perplexed, Mr. President. I didn't know at that time how to handle the issue, but I was really angry, is the word. But nevertheless, fast forward. After a year or two, I found out that the case was dismissed. They're out. He was right. And I asked why, and we tried to investigate. Apparently, nagpa-areglo yung pamilya. Na-areglo. Nawala yung kaso. So, Mr. President, this time around, I don't think it'll happen. So, we thank again the members of the Senate, particularly the Chair of the Committee on Public Order and the Senate President for this law finally seeing the light of day. So with that, Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Committee Report 232 and Senate Bill 1662, hopefully a third reading on Monday, Mr. President.
Any objection to the suspension of the consideration of the said measures? Hearing none, approved. Senator Gordon?
Yes, Mr. President, I would just like to make a query and a correction perhaps. Yesterday in the journal, it appeared that the referral of resolution filed by one of our colleagues to ask for an investigation of President Duterte and his daughter, Mayor Sara Carpio, was initially referred to the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies. Now, I know that Senator Escudero has said he's willing to do that, but I was not here when suddenly it was referred again to the Committee on Blue Ribbon, Mr. President.
There was no initial referral, Senator. There's only one referral, and it was directly to the Blue Ribbon as primary and to the Banks Committee as secondary.
Well, I'm just making a statement, Your Honor. It appears that it was referred to the
so the
Committee.
journal is mistaken. What page, sir?
The journal.
What page?
This is on the last page, 1426. On the right side, Mr. President.
Yes, sir, I see it. So the journal that did not reflect correctly what happened. So, Majority Leader, how do we proceed?
Mr. President, I move to reconsider the approval of the journal of Monday, February 5, 2018.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
But before we go on, Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I would just like to make a manifestation here. At first glance, the logical conclusion that the resolution of Senator Rejana 6 is a finding of probable fault into the President that he violated AMLA, Mr. President. Such cannot prima facie be in the jurisdiction of the Blue Ribbon Committee. If a citizen and here a senator feels that the President must be investigated, the proper jurisdiction is lodged in the House of Representatives, Mr. President. They are the ones who must determine possible violations of the AMLA by the Chief Executive, Mr. President. The rationale and point of an investigation into the acts of the President is an impeachment proceeding, which, if successful, will go into a full-blown trial before the Senate acting as an impeachment court. I will consult with the rest of the members of the Blue Ribbon Committee on how to move forward, bearing in mind that any statement made in a hearing that may be conducted could be construed as having a prejudge of a possible impeachment trial, Mr. President. We also need to tackle first the issue of whether or not the head of a co-equal branch can be compelled if prior invitations are refused to appear here. That is why I suggest that we carry a little, Mr. President, you could also refer this to the proper thing to do would be to file a case, in which case they can file it in the Ombudsman, which in turn would recommend the President for impeachment if that is her pleasure or her judgment. So I think that it would really affect not only our relationship but our working here in the Congress if we look into this case, because I think ultimately the logical conclusion would be impeachment, in which case it should be the House of Representatives who should handle this, Mr. President. I submit, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Senator Gordon. Majority Leader, let us first correct the journal and
Yes,
the
sir.
entry in the journal. Before we do that, Minority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, before we act on that, as we know, every session we have this order of business wherein the resolutions, the bills, etc., are listed, and there is already an initial recommendation by the Secretary where the matter should be referred. May I know in yesterday's order of business where the recommendation was made on the reference of this particular bill was? Where is it? So that before we say that the journal
Yes.
does not reflect it accurately?
It was at the tail end of the session yesterday, and it was referred to the Blue Ribbon primarily and to the bank secondarily.
Is that what the records show? Is that what our order of business
Yes, sir.
indicated?
The additional reference of business.
additional-
Yes, sir. And that's what I did.
All right.
I personally
all right.
did it yesterday.
Just a point of
So,
information.
Thank you.
We thank Senator Gordon for pointing this out. So,
Yes,
Majority
now,
Leader.
let's resolve it one by one, Mr. President. The first is that a true reflection of what transpired yesterday, now that we have opened the period or the journal again, the correct reflection is that the Senate President referred the resolution 602 to the Committee on Public Accountability, Accountability of Public Officers, I should say, Mr. President, or the Blue Ribbon, and then the Committee on Banks secondarily.
Yes, sir.
So I move that correction be made.
Let the correction be made.
Now, I move to approve the journal of February 5, 2018, Mr. President,
As corrected.
as corrected.
Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, approved.
Now, as to the question posed by Senator Gordon, I do not have a ready answer, Mr. President, so I move that the issue raised be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Senator Drilon.
Mr. President, the moment a matter is referred to the committee by the plenary, the committee has jurisdiction. Now, I can understand and I can see, I can understand the points raised by Senator Gordon, but isn't it the more appropriate procedure that the committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, now meets, having been because to that committee the resolution was submitted, and decide that indeed this is how it should be disposed of. In fact, that's provided in our rules, that the committee shall make an initial finding of its jurisdiction. So I believe that the proper procedure is for the committee to meet and dispose of the referral. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. But,
Mr. President,
Senator Gordon, yes,
I
sir.
agree with Senator Dillon. In fact, if you will look at the record, I said I will consult with the rest of the members of the Blue Ribbon Committee on how to move forward, bearing in mind that any statement made in a hearing that may be conducted could be construed as having prejudged a possible impeachment trial. That's why I was very careful. You know, I don't usually read my speeches, but I wanted to make sure I read this on the record para hindi tayo magkamali. And that is how I intend to proceed, Mr. President.
All right, in that
Majority
case, Mr.
Leader.
President, I withdraw my motion, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Thank you for...
So, nothing has changed. The referral stands.
Yes.
That is very clear. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1636 under Committee Report 213.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
This is the measure on the Lifetime Cell Phone Number Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we've started the period of interpellation yesterday. So may we recognize the sponsor, Chair of the Committee on Economic Affairs, Senator Win Gatchalian. And perhaps to continue interpellation is the Minority Leader who has asked that we be given copies of the 26 permits.
The sponsor, Senator Gatchalian, is recognized, and to continue with this interpellation, the Minority Leader.
Mr. President, as the records will show, I have actually terminated, I have manifested that we have no more questions, but we continue the period of interpellation because of the commitment of the sponsor and our request, which was endorsed by the Majority Leader and the Senate President, that the sponsor will kindly provide us with the 26 or so permits, licenses, which are required before a service provider can put up a cell site. which is one of the reasons cited for the delay in putting up of the cell site, which requires 9 months period. So our agreement yesterday, Mr. President, as the records will show, is that the good sponsor will just provide us with a copy of these 26 licenses required, and from there we can specifically direct the Senate panel to the anti-red tape bicameral committee deliberations to take up and remove the unnecessary permits that is presently being required of a telecommunications company before a cell site can be put up. So at this stage, Mr. President, may we know from the good sponsor if indeed he has this listing?
Yes, with the permission of the sponsor and Senator Dillon.
Yes.
Senator Zubiri, yes, sir.
Senator Dillon, I guess I'll be able to answer the good senator, as it's my committee that's handling the anti-red tape amendments. We just had a meeting today with our counterparts in the House, a small BICAM, and the BICAM will be on Monday next week here in the Senate. And we discussed the problem on cell sites. And we already included in the amended BICAM version that all national government agencies and local government agencies will be in scope of the measure. So when you apply now for cell sites, kasama na sila. In other words, the requirement, the rudimentary period, will apply to application also for cell sites. Your Honor.
Mr. President, in the debates yesterday, what came out were permits for occupancy of the cell site, which is required by the National Building Code. Sanitary permits for the cell site. Barangay clearances, which obviously, if you look at it, would be imposed on construction of the cell site because of the general laws on the point. So that is why we had requested for the specific licenses, so that we can in the bicameral conference committee and in the report and in the law, we can specify which of these will no longer be required before a cell site can be constructed. Obviously, if we do not include this in the law, a building permit would still be there because this is under the National Building Code.
Yes. I believe, I'm not sure, Mr. President, if we need a special law on or create a law for the cell site construction.
No. We are not. We are just saying that in the Anti-Red Tape Act, we should include a specific provision which would eliminate this red tape in this specific economic activity.
The only problem, Mr. President, I foresee, and I'm one with you, sir, I'm 200% with you. The only thing that I foresee that there are certain bodies like the local government, the barangay councils and local government units that come up with so many numerous requirements for certain permits. What we're doing is to come up with limited time for them to act on it. But I do not know if we can actually limit their power of creating ordinances or requirements for that particular certificate or license. That's a question. I'm not a lawyer, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
yes,
the plenary power of Congress would certainly justify the exercise of such power to delimit the powers of the barangay in issuing permits.
If there's a particular provision that he's, or a section that he would like to include in the anti-red tape bicameral conference, we'll accept, Mr. President, subject to style, on that particular issue.
That's why we're asking for the listing so that we can intelligently